The guard at the Waverly Pines gatehouse smiled at me like I was lost. "Name and residence, ma'am." "Diane Mercer. I'm visiting my son, 1847 Arbor Crown Drive." He checked his clipboard, then his computer, then his clipboard again. I watched his eyebrows furrow in that particular way people do when they're trying to figure out how someone like me ended up in a place like this. My Honda Accord was 12 years old. The leather on my steering wheel had cracked 2 summers ago. I kept meaning to fix it. "Mercer. Mercer." He found it. "Oh, the new construction. The big one on the corner. That's the one." He waved me through like he was doing me a favor. I drove slowly through Waverly Pines, taking in the manicured lawns, the stone fountains, the houses that looked less like homes and more like statements. The azaleas were blooming, explosions of pink and white against fresh mulch that probably cost more per bag than my weekly groceries. The air smelled like jasmine and freshly laid sod and money. My son lived here now. My son. Brandon, who used to catch fireflies in mason jars. Brandon, who cried the first time he caught a fish because he felt bad for it. Brandon, who held my hand at his father's funeral and promised me, "I'll always take care of you, Mom. Always." That was 5 years ago. I glanced at the passenger seat where a bottle of 2015 Chateauneuf du Pape sat wrapped in tissue paper. $63. I'd stood in the wine shop for 20 minutes, Googling what pairs well with elegant dinner parties, feeling like a fraud the entire time. The young clerk with the nose ring had finally taken pity on me and pointed me towards something universally impressive. I hoped it was enough. I hoped I was enough. The house appeared around the bend, and even though I'd seen it before, my breath still caught. 5,000 square feet of pale gray stone and black shutters, a circular driveway, boxwoods trimmed into perfect spheres. Through the tall windows, I could see golden light and movement, people laughing, holding wine glasses, floating through rooms I had furnished. The down payment had been $140,000. I remembered signing the check, my hand trembling slightly. Harold's life insurance money flowing out of my account and into my son's future. Then came the first year of mortgage payments, the property taxes, the HOA fees, the furniture. Oh, the furniture. Chloe had a very specific vision, Brandon explained. Italian leather, hand-knotted rugs, a dining table that cost more than my first car. 174 receipts. I had them all saved in a folder on my phone, organized by date. Bookkeeper's habit. 35 years of balancing other people's accounts had taught me one thing: always keep the receipts. I parked on the street. Chloe had mentioned once that driveway parking looked cluttered, and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I'd had my hair done that morning. Spent 45 minutes picking out this dress, navy blue, modest, the kind of thing I thought might make me look like I belonged. But staring at myself now, under the glow of the street lamp, I just looked like what I was, a 63-year-old widow trying too hard. Stop it, Diane. He's your son. This is a celebration. I grabbed the wine and walked toward the house. Brandon met me on the porch before I could ring the bell. He slipped through the front door and pulled it shut behind him, fast, like he was keeping something contained. My boy, though I suppose I shouldn't call him that anymore, stood in front of me in a suit that probably cost $1,000, his hair styled with some kind of product that made it look wet, his eyes darting everywhere except my face. Mom. He said it like a warning. Hey. Hi, sweetheart. I lifted the wine. I brought a Chateauneuf du Pape. The man at the store said it's... Mom, listen. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Behind him, through the frosted glass panels framing the door, I could see silhouettes moving. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Tonight's not. It's not a good night. What do you mean? You invited me. You said it was your first big dinner party. You said... I know what I said. His jaw tightened. But Chloe's friends are here. Her grandmother flew in from Asheville. These are important people, Mom. They're... He stopped himself. They're what? He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my stomach drop. Shame. Not shame. For me. Shame of me. Chloe doesn't think you'd fit the vibe, he said quietly. She doesn't want you at the table tonight. The words hit me like a slap. I stood there, holding my $63 wine in my 45-minute dress with my freshly done hair, and I felt every single one of my 63 years pressing down on my shoulders. The vibe, I repeated. It's just for tonight, Mom. I swear, He ran a hand through his expensive hair. We need to look like we built this life ourselves. These people, they talk. If they knew that you... He stopped again. You understand, right? Through the glass I saw movement. A woman in cream-colored silk gliding into view. Chloe, my daughter-in-law. She was laughing at something, her head thrown back, her hand resting on the arm of an older woman in pearls, Eleanor, the grandmother I'd never been allowed to properly meet. They were standing near the fireplace, and I could just make out the edge of the Italian leather sofa, the $20,000 sofa I'd paid for. Chloe turned toward the door. Our eyes met through the glass. She smiled, a small, tight smile, and gave me a wave, a little flutter of her fingers. Dismissive, the kind of wave you give a delivery driver who showed up at the wrong time. Then she turned her back and disappeared into my furniture. Brandon was still talking. Mom? Mom, are you okay? It's just one night. I'll make it up to you. We'll do brunch next week, just us, I promise. Okay, Brandon. My voice sounded strange, calm, flat. I understand perfectly. I tucked the wine bottle under my arm. I'd be damned if I was leaving it for them, and turned back toward my cracked leather Honda. Mom, wait. Enjoy your party, sweetheart. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back, I would cry, and Diane Mercer does not cry in public. 35 years of bookkeeping, of sitting across from clients who screamed at me over numbers I didn't create, of absorbing Harold's death in a hospital hallway surrounded by strangers. I had learned to hold it together until I was alone. I made it to my car. I made it inside. I made it 3 blocks past the Waverly Pines gatehouse before I had to pull into the parking lot of a closed dry cleaner because my hands were shaking too hard to drive. The tears came then. Hot and furious and silent. I gripped the steering wheel and let them fall, staring at the glowing sign. Martindale Cleaners, same-day service. While my chest heaved. Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? I gave them everything, everything. And then, from somewhere deep in my memory, I heard Harold's voice. Clear as the day he'd said it, 3 weeks before his heart gave out, sitting on our back porch with a beer in his hand. Never let anyone make you small, Di. Not anyone. You're worth more than you know. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. I sat there for a long time, letting the engine idle, letting Harold's words settle into my bones. The anger came slowly at first, a flicker, a spark. Then it caught. I thought about the receipts, all 174 of them. I thought about the gift agreement sitting in my filing cabinet at home. The one Leonard Katz had drawn up. The one with the clause about honored family member. The one James Ashford had called toothless. I opened my phone. Not to call anyone. Not yet. Just to look at the folder. To remind myself that I was not a fool. That I had protected myself even when I didn't know I'd need to. They think I'm a delivery driver, I thought. Someone to wave away. I pulled out of the parking lot. I didn't go home to cry. I went home to plan. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at Harold's old desk in the spare bedroom, the one I'd turned into a home office after he died, and I pulled out every piece of paper I'd been too sentimental to organize properly for 5 years. The life insurance policy, the bank statements, the canceled checks, and there, in a manila folder labeled Brandon House, the gift agreement Leonard Katz had drawn up 18 months ago. The paper was crisp, official, 3 pages of legal language that I'd insisted on, even when Brandon looked at me with wounded eyes and said, "Mom, you don't need a contract. I'm your son." I'd felt guilty then, like I was being paranoid, like I was insulting him. Now, at 2:47 in the morning, with the taste of humiliation still bitter on my tongue, I read every word. The donor shall retain visitation rights and be welcomed at all family gatherings held in the residence. The donor shall be treated as an honored family member. In the event of breach, the gift shall convert to a demand loan, payable in full within 90 days. James Ashford had laughed at this clause. I remembered that now. Brandon had mentioned it casually over dinner once, how Chloe's cousin, the estate attorney, had reviewed the agreement and called it adorable but unenforceable. Adorable. I set the agreement aside and opened my laptop. The folder was right there on my desktop. House expenses, Brandon and Chloe. I clicked it open and watched the receipts cascade down the screen like a slot machine hitting jackpot. 174 entries, every single one dated, categorized, cross-referenced to my bank statements. Down payment, $140,000. First-year mortgage, 12 payments, $48,600. Property taxes, year 1, $14,200. HOA fees, 18 months, $8,400. Furniture, fixtures, appliances, $127,340. Landscaping installation, $22,000. Window treatments, Chloe's Custom Vision, $18,700. Pool house renovation, unpermitted, I noted with a grim smile, $31,500. The total glowed at the bottom of my spreadsheet, $487,240. I stared at that number until my eyes burned. It hadn't started this way. None of it had. When Harold died, a massive coronary in the cereal aisle of the Harris Teeter, reaching for his favorite granola, I thought my life was over. 41 years of marriage, gone between one heartbeat and the next. The funeral was a blur. The weeks after were worse. I wandered through our little ranch house like a ghost, touching his things, smelling his shirts, waiting for him to walk through the door and tell me it was all a bad dream. Brandon came home for a month. He took leave from work, slept in his old bedroom, made me eat when I forgot to. He held my hand and promised me over and over, "I'll always take care of you, Mom. Always." 6 months later, the life insurance check arrived. $620,000. More money than I'd ever seen in my life, and it felt like blood money. Like the universe was trying to put a price tag on Harold. I didn't touch it for almost a year. Then Brandon called, crying. I should have recognized the pattern then. He only called crying when Chloe was involved, when she was unhappy, when she was threatening, when she needed something that would save their marriage. But he was my son, my only child, and his voice broke something open in me every single time. "Mom, we found our dream house, but we can't qualify for the mortgage on our own. The down payment is. Mom, it's a lot. But Chloe says if we can get into Waverly Pines, everything will change. Her grandmother's friends live there. It'll open doors for us, for our future, for our kids. Mom, your future grandkids." Future grandkids. He knew exactly where to aim. "How much do you need, sweetheart?" The number made me dizzy, but I wrote the check anyway, because that's what mothers do. We give until we're empty, and then we find more to give. The furniture came next. Chloe had a very specific vision. Those words, always those words, and apparently my son's salary couldn't support Italian leather and hand-knotted rugs. Then the window treatments, then the landscaping, then the pool house that Chloe needed for entertaining. Every check I wrote, I told myself it was an investment in Brandon's happiness, in my future relationship with my grandchildren, in being part of their beautiful new life. But the invitations never came. Oh, there were excuses. The house wasn't ready. Chloe was stressed about the renovations. They were too busy establishing themselves. Maybe next month. Maybe after the holidays. Maybe. And then Chloe's mother moved into the guest cottage. Not me. Not the woman who'd paid for the guest cottage. Patricia Ashford, Chloe's mother, a brittle woman with a perpetual martini in hand, who contributed nothing but commentary and complaints. She got the cottage with the garden view. I got a standing invitation to stop by sometime that never materialized into an actual visit. I mentioned my concerns exactly once. It was at Margaret's birthday dinner, Harold's sister, the one who'd always looked at me like I'd stolen something precious from her. We were at a steakhouse, the kind with cloth napkins and $40 entrees, and I'd made the mistake of saying quietly, to no one in particular, "I just wish they'd let me visit more. I've put so much into that house, and I've only seen it twice." Margaret set down her fork with a clink. "Diane." Her voice had that particular sweetness that Southern women use when they're about to gut you. "Chloe comes from a good family, old money, class. You should be grateful Brandon married up. Not everyone's son brings home a woman like that." "I'm not saying—" "You're always saying." She picked up her fork again, dismissing me. "You've always been too sensitive. Harold spoiled you. Now Brandon has his own life, his own wife, and you need to learn your place." My place. I'd paid for the place, every square foot of it. But I didn't say that. I just nodded, finished my steak, and drove home alone to a house that felt bigger and emptier every day. Now, sitting at Harold's desk at 3:30 in the morning, I saw the pattern with brutal clarity. I picked up my phone and called Ruth. She answered on the second ring because Ruth Castellano has never slept properly a day in her life. "Diane, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "No," I said. "I'm not." I told her everything, the porch, the wave. The vibe. Brandon's eyes sliding away from mine like I was a stranger asking for change. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Then she said what Ruth always says, the thing I need to hear, not the thing I want to hear. "Honey, you've been managed." "What?" "Managed, like an account, like a resource." I heard her shifting in bed, probably reaching for the cigarettes she claimed to have quit. They figured out exactly how much they could take and exactly how little they had to give back. And you let them because you love Brandon and because you're good and because you keep thinking if you just give a little more, he'll come back to you. My throat tightened. He's my son. He's a grown man who let his wife wave you away like a Jehovah's Witness on a Saturday morning while you were standing on the porch of a house you paid for. Ruth exhaled. "Diane, I love you, but you need to wake up. These people don't see you as family. They see you as a checkbook with a heartbeat." I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend Brandon, to explain that he was under Chloe's influence, that the boy who caught fireflies was still in there somewhere. But I couldn't, because Ruth was right. I looked at the spreadsheet glowing on my laptop screen. $487,240. A lifetime of Harold's hard work and my careful saving poured into a house where I wasn't welcome to sit at the table. "Ruth," I said slowly, "I have the receipts, all of them. I know you do. You're a bookkeeper. You have receipts for receipts. And I have a gift agreement, with a clause about being treated as an honored family member, and a conversion to a demand loan if they breach." Silence on the other end. Then Ruth laughed, a sharp, surprised sound. "Diane Marie Mercer, are you telling me you lawyered your own son?" "Leonard Katz helped me draft it. Brandon's wife's cousin, the estate attorney, said it was toothless." "And is it?" I thought about the video doorbell. The one Brandon had insisted on installing for security. The one that had recorded in perfect clarity my own son turning me away from the house I'd funded. "No," I said. "I don't think it is." I could almost hear Ruth grinning through the phone. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the receipts, at the gift agreement, at Harold's old coffee mug sitting on the desk, the one that said, "World's okayest husband," the one I couldn't bring myself to put away. "Never let anyone make you small, Di." "I'm going to make some calls," I said, "and I'm going to need your help." 3 days after the porch, I started organizing, not cleaning. I do that when I'm anxious. This was different. This was preparation. I cleared Harold's desk completely for the first time since he died, setting aside his coffee mug and his old Rolodex and the photograph of us at Myrtle Beach in 1987, both of us sunburned and grinning like idiots. Then I built my case. I printed every receipt, all 174 of them, organized chronologically in a 3-ring binder with tabbed dividers. I made backup copies on 2 different flash drives. I downloaded my bank statements going back 3 years and highlighted every transfer to Brandon's account in yellow, every payment made directly to vendors in pink. Ruth called me obsessive. I called it thorough. 35 years of bookkeeping had taught me that the difference between winning and losing usually came down to documentation. On the 4th day, I started going through my emails. I have a folder called Brandon House Stuff, where I'd saved every message related to the Waverly Pines purchase, mortgage documents, insurance policies, contractor invoices that Brandon had forwarded me so I could pay them directly. Chloe's lengthy emails about her vision for each room, always phrased as suggestions, but understood as commands. I was looking for the original gift agreement. I wanted to compare Leonard's copy to whatever version James Ashford might have kept, when I found it. An email chain I'd never seen before, buried in a forwarded message from 8 months ago, nested so deep in the thread that I'd missed it the first time. Brandon had sent me a contractor's invoice for the pool house, but he'd forwarded the entire chain by mistake, including messages that were never meant for my eyes. The subject line was, "Re-mom situation, timeline." My heart stopped. I clicked it open. The chain started with Chloe. Of course it did. From Chloe Ashford Mercer. To James Ashford. Date, March 15th, 2024. Jamie. Quick question. How much longer do we need to keep this up with Diane? She's asking about visiting again, and honestly, I can't keep making excuses. Brandon feels guilty every time he has to put her off, and it's exhausting managing his emotions on top of everything else. Grandmother says we should maintain the relationship until the house is fully paid off, but at this rate, that could take another 2 years. Is there a way to accelerate the timeline? Maybe convince her to pay off the mortgage entirely as an early inheritance? Let me know. Drinks Thursday? C. I read it twice, 3 times. The words swam in front of my eyes. Keep this up with Diane, managing his emotions. Maintain the relationship until the house is fully paid off. James had responded the next day. From James Ashford. To Chloe Ashford Mercer. Date, March 16th, 2024. Chloe. Patience. I know she's tedious, but the woman is a golden goose. My advice, keep her at arm's length, but not so far that she stops laying eggs. The occasional lunch, a birthday card. Maybe let her come to Christmas if you can stomach it. Small investments for large returns. As for the early inheritance angle, risky. If she gets suspicious and involves her own attorney, we could have a problem. That gift agreement she insisted on has some annoying language about honored family member status. It's probably unenforceable, but why poke the bear? Better strategy. Wait until she's funded at least 80% of the mortgage, then gradually transition her out. By then, the paper trail will be so long that no court will untangle it. She'll grumble, maybe cry to her friends, but she won't fight. Women like her never do. Thursday works. 7 p.m. at the Capitol Grill? I sat perfectly still in my chair. Women like her never do. There was one more message in the chain. From Eleanor Ashford herself, CC'd in by Chloe. From Eleanor Ashford to Chloe Ashford, Mercer, James Ashford. Date, March 17th, 2024. Children. This is precisely the kind of strategic thinking the Ashford family was built on. Chloe, darling, your grandmother is proud. James, continue to monitor the legal situation. And both of you, remember that discretion is everything. The Mercer woman may be simple, but simple people talk to other simple people, and gossip has a way of spreading. Handle her gently until she's no longer useful. Then we'll discuss next steps. Dinner at the club, Sunday. Don't be late. E. I closed the laptop. My hands weren't shaking anymore. That surprised me. I'd expected to feel rage or grief or the kind of bone-deep hurt that had flattened me at the dry cleaner's parking lot. But sitting there in Harold's chair, in the quiet house we'd paid off together 20 years ago, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. Cold, crystalline clarity. They had never seen me as Brandon's mother. They had seen me as a resource to be extracted and discarded. A golden goose. A simple woman who could be handled gently until I was no longer useful. James Ashford thought the gift agreement was unenforceable. Eleanor Ashford thought I would grumble and cry, but never fight. Chloe thought she could wave me away like a delivery driver and face no consequences. They were all about to learn how wrong they were. Leonard Katz's office smelled like old books and older coffee. He was 71 now, semi-retired, working out of a converted bedroom in his townhouse near the university. I'd known him for 30 years. He'd handled Harold's will, our property transfer, a dozen small legal matters over the decades. He was the kind of lawyer who still used a Rolodex and called everyone counselor, even when they weren't. He read the gift agreement twice, then the email chain 3 times. His eyebrows climbed higher with each pass. "Diane," he said finally, setting down the papers. "Tell me you have copies of everything." 2 flash drives and a cloud backup, plus the printed binder. He almost smiled. "Of course you do. Bookkeeper." "Is it enforceable, Leonard?" "The gift agreement. James Ashford said it was toothless." Leonard leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "James Ashford is an estate attorney who handles wills and trusts for rich people who want to avoid taxes. He's never litigated a contract dispute in his life." Leonard tapped the agreement. "This language, treated as an honored family member, welcomed at all family gatherings. It's vague, I'll grant him that. But vague isn't the same as unenforceable, especially when you have documented evidence of systematic exclusion." "The video doorbell," I said. "It recorded Brandon turning me away." "Perfect. What else?" "I was never invited to Thanksgiving, or Christmas, or Easter, or any of the dinner parties Chloe hosts monthly." I pulled out my phone and showed him my calendar app. "I've been keeping track. 18 events in the past year. I was invited to 2. I attended 0 because both invitations were rescinded at the last minute." Leonard whistled low. "And the emails, where Chloe explicitly discusses transitioning you out after extracting maximum value?" "On the flash drives. Diane." He looked at me with something like admiration. "You've built a better case than most of my clients who actually hire investigators." "I'm a bookkeeper," I said. "We notice things." He nodded slowly, turning the agreement over in his hands. "Here's what we have. The gift agreement converts to a demand loan upon breach of the honored family member clause. That gives you the right to demand repayment of all funds, $487,000 according to your documentation, within 90 days. They can't pay that, not without selling the house." I'd known this, but hearing Leonard say it made it real. "What else?" I asked. "What other pressure points exist?" He raised an eyebrow. "You want to play hardball? I want justice. There's a difference." Leonard smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "All right. The pool house, the one Chloe added for entertaining. Did she pull permits?" "I don't think so. Brandon mentioned the contractor was a friend who gave them a deal. HOA communities like Waverly Pines have strict rules about unpermitted construction. A formal complaint triggers an inspection. Fines start at $500 per day until compliance is achieved." I thought about Chloe's face, about the dismissive wave. "What else?" "Gift tax reporting. The IRS requires that gifts over $17,000 per year be reported. You gave them nearly $500,000 over 18 months. Did they file the proper gift tax returns?" "I filed on my end. I don't know about theirs." "If they didn't, that's tax fraud. You can notify the IRS anonymously." I wrote it down. HOA IRS. "And the bank?" Leonard leaned forward. The bank approved their mortgage based on certain representations about their financial situation. If those representations were false, if, for example, they claimed your gift as their own assets, that's mortgage fraud. The bank takes a very dim view of mortgage fraud, especially when the fraudulent loan is brought to their attention by someone with documentation. I looked at my notes. 3 pressure points plus the demand loan. 4 hammers ready to fall. "When do we start?" I asked. Leonard studied me for a long moment. "Diane, are you sure about this? Brandon is your son. Once you pull these triggers, there's no going back. The relationship, Leonard." I cut him off, not harshly, but firmly. My son stood on a porch I paid for and told me I wasn't the right vibe to enter a house I furnished. His wife waved at me like I was delivering packages. And his in-laws have been planning to discard me like a used napkin once they've extracted everything they can. I tucked my notes into my purse. The relationship is already over. They ended it. I'm just making sure they understand the cost. Leonard nodded slowly. "Then we start Monday," he said. "I'll draft the demand letter. You gather the HOA documentation and the bank's original loan application. And Diane?" "Yes?" He smiled, thin and sharp. "It's been a long time since I've had a case this satisfying. Thank you for that." I started on a Tuesday. There's something fitting about that. Tuesdays are ordinary days. Nothing special. The kind of day you forget as soon as it's over. I wanted the destruction of their perfect life to begin on a day so mundane they wouldn't even see it coming. Ruth sat across from me at my kitchen table, nursing her 3rd cup of coffee while I worked through my checklist. She'd offered to help, but there wasn't much for her to do except bear witness. This was bookkeeper's work, precise, methodical, devastating in its simplicity. First, the automatic transfers. I logged into my bank account and navigated to the scheduled payments. There they were, lined up like soldiers. Mortgage payment, $4,050, due the 1st of each month. Property tax escrow, $1,183. HOA fees, $467. Homeowner's insurance, $312. Landscaping service, $800. I canceled them one by one. Each click felt like setting down a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. For 18 months, I'd watched these numbers leave my account like clockwork, funding a life I wasn't permitted to participate in. No more. "How does it feel?" Ruth asked, watching my face. "Like balancing a ledger that's been wrong for years." Second, the bank notification. Leonard had drafted a formal letter explaining that the gift agreement had been breached and that all funds previously transferred should now be considered a demand loan. I uploaded the supporting documentation, the gift agreement, the video doorbell footage, the email chain, 3 pages of my exclusion calendar, and sent it to the mortgage servicing department with a read receipt request. Third, the HOA complaint. This one gave me a small, sharp satisfaction. Chloe's precious pool house, the one she'd built without permits because her contractor friend gave her a deal, violated at least 4 sections of the Waverly Pines Community Guidelines. I filled out the complaint form online, attached photographs from Brandon's own Instagram — Chloe really should have made his account private — and submitted it with a note requesting expedited review due to safety concerns. Fourth, the IRS tip line. Anonymous, simple. I reported that the residents of 1847 Arbor Crown Drive may have failed to properly report substantial gift income over the past 18 months. I included no identifying information about myself. I didn't need to. Finally, the shared access folders. Chloe had insisted I maintain a shared Google Drive with all the receipts and invoices for their records. I'd thought it was thoughtful at the time. Now I understood. She wanted to make sure I couldn't claim I'd paid for anything without her having copies to dispute. I deleted my access. Every folder, every file. Let her try to prove she owned anything without my records. "Done," I said, closing my laptop. Ruth raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. "To Diane Mercer, the most terrifying accountant in North Carolina." I didn't smile. Not yet. The dominoes were set. Now I just had to wait for them to fall. They started falling exactly 9 days later. I know because Margaret called me, breathless with gossip she didn't realize she was delivering to the source. Diane, you won't believe what's happening at Brandon's house. I was making lunch, a simple chicken salad, the kind Harold used to love, and I tucked the phone between my ear and shoulder. What do you mean? The landscapers quit, just walked off the job yesterday. And the pool, honey, the pool is green, like pond water. Chloe posted something on Instagram about technical difficulties with her pool service, but the comments. Margaret laughed, a mean little sound. People are asking if they're having money trouble. Can you imagine? Chloe Ashford Mercer having money trouble? I added a little more mayo to my chicken. How strange. And that's not even the worst part. Patricia told me, you know Patricia, Chloe's mother, the one in the guest cottage? She said there's some kind of issue with the HOA. Inspectors came by yesterday. Something about the pool house not being up to code. Chloe was absolutely livid. That does sound stressful. I almost feel bad for her. Margaret paused. Almost. You know, I've always thought she was a bit much. The way she treats people. The way she's treated you. This was new. Margaret had never acknowledged Chloe's treatment of me before. I filed it away for later. How is Brandon handling it? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Oh, you know Brandon, head in the sand. Patricia said he's been sleeping in the guest room. Apparently he and Chloe had a massive fight about money. Something about payments not going through? The mortgage. It would have bounced by now. The first of the month had come and gone with no transfer from my account. The bank would have sent a notice. Chloe would have seen it. I hope they work it out, I said. You're a saint, Diane? After the way they've treated you? I would have stopped helping them ages ago. I did, I thought, 9 days ago. I should go, Margaret. My lunch is getting cold. After she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and ate my chicken salad in silence. The house was quiet. The afternoon light slanted through the windows Harold had installed himself 30 years ago, when we were young and broke and building something together. I thought about Brandon in that guest room, his marriage crumbling, his wife screaming about money that had stopped appearing like magic. I waited to feel guilty. I didn't. The calls started 3 days later. At first, it was just Chloe. 2 calls in one afternoon, both sent to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She never left messages. Chloe communicated through implication and expectation, not words. Then Brandon. Once in the evening, once the next morning. His voicemail was short, clipped, confused. Mom, hey, it's me. Can you call me back? There's something weird going on with some of the accounts. I'm sure it's just a glitch, but I wanted to check. Call me, please. I saved the message but didn't respond. The next day, Eleanor Ashford herself showed up at my door. I saw her through the peephole, that rigid posture, the pearls, the Mercedes sedan idling in my driveway like it was embarrassed to be there. I considered not answering. But Harold had always said that avoiding a fight only delayed it, never prevented it. I opened the door. Mrs. Ashford. Mrs. Mercer. Her eyes swept over me, over my modest foyer, over the life I'd built without her family's help or approval. May I come in? I'd rather you didn't. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of anger. Eleanor Ashford was not accustomed to being refused entry. This will only take a moment. Then say it here. She straightened her spine, which I hadn't thought possible. The woman already had the posture of a ruler. There seems to be some confusion regarding your financial arrangements with my granddaughter and her husband. Payments have stopped. Accounts have been frozen. I'm sure this is simply an oversight, but Chloe is understandably concerned. There's no oversight, I said. There's no confusion. I've simply stopped funding a life I'm not welcome to be part of. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Mercer, Diane, I understand you may be feeling sensitive about certain social dynamics. But surely you can see that family finances are not the place to express personal grievances. Family. I tasted the word. Is that what we are, Eleanor? Because your family emails suggest otherwise. Something about transitioning me out once I was no longer useful? The color drained from her face. I don't know what you think you... I have the emails, I have the receipts, I have a gift agreement with a breach clause that your grandson-in-law assured everyone was toothless. I smiled, and it felt like putting on armor. James was wrong. My attorney has already contacted the bank. Eleanor stood frozen on my porch, her mouth slightly open, her carefully constructed world tilting beneath her feet. You'll be hearing from our lawyers, she finally managed. I look forward to it. They can coordinate with Leonard Katz. He's in the phone book. I closed the door in her face. Through the window I watched her walk back to her Mercedes. Her steps weren't as steady as they'd been when she arrived. She sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, not moving, staring at nothing. Then she pulled out her phone. The dominoes were falling faster now. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I walked over and looked at the screen. Missed calls. 47. Brandon, 12. Chloe, 8. Unknown number, 6. James Ashford, 4. Margaret, 3. Unknown number, 14. I poured myself a glass of wine, not the $63 Chateauneuf du Pape that was still in my trunk, and sat down in Harold's chair. The phone kept buzzing. I didn't answer. The foreclosure notice arrived on a Thursday. I know because Ruth called me at 7:15 in the morning, cackling so hard she could barely breathe. It's on the HOA Facebook group, she gasped. Someone posted a photo of the notice taped to their front door. Diane, the comments. Chloe's friends are absolutely eviscerating her. One woman wrote, I guess the vibe finally caught up with them. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. What about Brandon? Ruth's laughter faded. Honey, I don't know. But you can't think about that right now. You did what you had to do. After she hung up, I sat with my coffee and watched the sunrise through Harold's window. Somewhere across town, in a house I'd paid for, my son was waking up to the ruins of his life. I wondered if he hated me yet. The dominoes didn't just fall, they cascaded. The HOA fines arrived first. $500 per day for the unpermitted pool house, retroactive for 60 days. Chloe tried to argue that the structure was grandfathered in, but the Waverly Pines Board had no patience for a woman who'd looked down her nose at half of them for 2 years. They demanded immediate compliance, tear down the pool house or face liens. The IRS audit letter came next. I didn't see it myself, but Margaret, who had become my unlikely source of intelligence, reported that Patricia was absolutely hysterical about it. Apparently, James Ashford's clever financial structuring hadn't been quite as clever as he thought. Speaking of James, his employer received an anonymous complaint about potential ethical violations in his handling of family legal matters. A conflict of interest, specifically, advising his cousin on how to extract money from a client's family member while failing to disclose the relationship. The state bar opened an investigation. James stopped returning Chloe's calls. And then there was the SUV. Patricia's son, Tyler, the one who'd been living rent-free in Diane's funded paradise, had been driving a Range Rover that was technically leased under Brandon's name, paid for with money that used to flow from my account. When the payments stopped, so did the lease agreement. The repo company found the car at the Waverly Pines clubhouse, where Tyler had parked it during a tennis lesson. They towed it with his golf clubs still in the trunk. Ruth said Tyler cried. I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. On day 23, I finally answered Brandon's call. I'd watched the number flash across my screen 174 times, one for every receipt, I realized later, though I don't think the universe is quite that poetic. Each time, I'd let it ring. Each time, I'd listen to the voicemail afterward. The messages evolved. At first, confusion. Mom, there's been a mistake. Then frustration. Why aren't you answering? Then desperation. Mom, please, I don't understand what's happening. And finally, on day 22, something that sounded almost like the boy I remembered. Mom, I know you're getting these. I know you're there. I need to hear your voice. Please, I'm sorry. I don't even know what I'm sorry for, but I'm sorry. Please call me back. So on day 23, when his number appeared again, I picked up. Brandon. Silence, then a ragged breath. Mom. His voice cracked. Oh God. Mom, you answered. I did. Why? He stopped, started again. Mom, the bank says the house isn't ours. They're saying we have 30 days. There's something about a demand loan, something about a gift agreement breach, and Chloe's lawyers keep asking for documents, and I don't know what any of it means. Yes, you do, Brandon. Silence again. Longer this time. The gift agreement, he said slowly. The one you made me sign. The one you said I didn't need because you were my son. I heard something that might have been a sob, quickly strangled. Mom, Chloe said, she told me. What did Chloe tell you? She said you wouldn't care. The words tumbled out now, dam breaking. She said you loved me so much that you'd always help, no matter what. She said keeping you at a distance was actually protecting you because her family was complicated, and you'd be happier not dealing with their drama. She said the money didn't matter to you like family mattered to you. And you believed her. I wanted to. His voice broke completely. I wanted to believe I could have both, her and you, the life she wanted and the mom I loved. But every time I tried to include you, she had a reason why it wouldn't work. And I kept choosing the path of least resistance. I kept choosing her. I closed my eyes. This was the moment I'd imagined so many times over the past 3 weeks. The moment my son finally understood what he'd done. The moment he begged for forgiveness. In my fantasies, I'd been righteous, cold, unmoved. In reality, sitting in Harold's chair, listening to my child cry, I just felt hollow. Brandon, do you know what hurt the most? It wasn't the money. It was standing on that porch, holding a bottle of wine I'd spent an hour choosing, and watching your wife wave at me like I was nobody, and you just stood there. You let her. I know. You told me I wasn't the right vibe. I know, Mom. I know. I hate myself for it. That's not the same as changing. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. Chloe's filing for divorce. She says I let this happen. She says I should have managed you better. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. She's moving back in with her mother, except your lawyer sent Patricia a notice too, something about the guest cottage being part of the gift agreement, and now she has to leave by the end of the month. I know. Mom, I'm going to lose everything. I thought about that word. Everything. The house, the car, the wife who'd never loved him, only what he could provide, the in-laws who'd treated him as a means to an end. No, Brandon, you're going to lose the things that were never really yours. There's a difference. He didn't respond. I could hear him breathing, ragged and wet. I have to go, I said. But Brandon, yeah? When you're ready to stop being Chloe's husband and start being my son again, you know where I live. The door is open. It's always been open. You just have to choose to walk through it. I hung up before he could respond. Then I sat in the silence of my house, the house Harold and I had built together, the house that was mine, truly mine, every paid-off square foot of it, and I let myself cry. The legal skirmish was brief and brutal. Chloe hired an attorney, not James, who was too busy with his bar investigation, to challenge the gift agreement. They argued that the honored family member clause was too vague to enforce. They argued that Diane had implicitly waived her rights by continuing to make payments after being excluded. Leonard Katz responded with a 40-page filing that included the original gift agreement, the video doorbell footage, the email chain between Chloe and James, the calendar documenting 18 months of systematic exclusion, and a forensic accountant's analysis of exactly where my $487,040 had gone. Chloe's attorney withdrew from the case 2 days later. There was no settlement. There was no negotiation. The house went to foreclosure. The bank recovered what it could, and the remaining debt, approximately $340,000, became Brandon and Chloe's problem, not mine. Margaret showed up at my door a week after the foreclosure was finalized. She stood on my porch, holding a casserole dish and wearing an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Shame. "I brought you a chicken tetrazzini," she said. "Harold's favorite." "I remember." "Can I come in?" I studied her for a long moment. This woman who'd told me to learn my place, who'd sided with Chloe because Chloe came from a good family. She looked older than I remembered, smaller. "Why?" I asked. "Because I was wrong." Her voice trembled slightly. "I was jealous of you, Diane. Jealous of how much Harold loved you. Jealous of how close you were with Brandon. When Chloe started pushing you out, part of me was glad. I thought, finally, Diane gets to feel what it's like to be on the outside. And now I watch them treat you like garbage, and I said nothing. I watched them plan to throw you away, and I took their side." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Eleanor called me last week. She wanted me to testify against you in the lawsuit. She called you that Mercer woman, like you weren't family, like Harold hadn't loved you more than anything in this world." She thrust the casserole toward me. "I should have defended you. I should have seen what they were. I'm sorry, Diane. I'm so sorry." I looked at the casserole, at Margaret's tear-streaked face, at the years of petty resentment finally crumbling into something honest. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. "I'll make coffee." But 6 months later, I watched the sunset from a balcony in Hilton Head, drinking a glass of wine that cost more than the bottle I'd brought to Brandon's dinner party. The ocean stretched out before me, all copper and gold in the fading light. The air smelled like salt and jasmine and something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. "You know," Ruth said from the lounge chair beside me, "I could get used to this." "You should. I'm paying." "Damn right you are. Consider it compensation for 30 years of listening to you worry about everyone except yourself." I smiled. A real smile, the kind that had felt foreign for so long. Ruth had insisted on coming with me, claiming she needed a vacation, but I knew the truth. She was making sure I actually went. Left to my own devices, I would have found some reason to stay home, some responsibility to tend to, some excuse to keep putting myself last. Not anymore. The resort was beautiful, the kind of place I'd walked past my whole life, assuming it was meant for other people. Richer people. More deserving people. But Harold's voice kept echoing in my head. "You're worth more than you know, Di." I was finally starting to believe him. The $487,240 was gone, of course. You can't ungive a gift, even when the gift agreement converts to a demand loan. The foreclosure recovered some of it. The rest evaporated into legal fees and broken dreams and a marriage that had been built on sand. But here's what I'd learned. The money had never really been mine to keep. The moment I'd written that first check, hoping to buy my way into my son's life, I'd already lost it. What I'd gained in return, clarity, self-respect, the knowledge that I would never again let anyone treat me as less than I was worth, that was priceless. My phone buzzed on the table between us. I glanced at the screen. A text from Brandon. "Mom, I know you're on vacation. I don't want to bother you. I just wanted to say I got a job. A real one. Sales manager at a plumbing supply company." Dad would have laughed. I stared at the message for a long moment. Ruth leaned over. "Is that him?" "Yes." "What does he want?" "Nothing." I set the phone down. "He just wanted to tell me he got a job." Ruth raised an eyebrow. "That's it? No ask for money? No guilt trip?" "No." She was quiet for a moment. Then, maybe there's hope for him yet." I picked up my wine and watched the sun sink into the ocean. Maybe there was. Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear, the kind of November day that made North Carolina feel almost like the postcards. I'd spent the morning cooking. Turkey, of course, Harold's mother's recipe, the one with the herb butter under the skin. Mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce from scratch, not the canned stuff. Sweet potato pie, because Harold had always insisted pumpkin was overrated nonsense. The house smelled like home, like memory, like all the Thanksgivings Harold and I had hosted back when the table was full and the laughter was easy. Ruth arrived first, carrying 3 bottles of wine and a store-bought pumpkin pie just to spite Harold's ghost. Margaret came next, nervous and overdressed, clutching a basket of rolls she'd baked herself. She'd been different since the day she showed up with the casserole, softer, more careful with her words. We weren't friends exactly, but we were family in the complicated way that family sometimes works. "The table looks beautiful," she said, setting down the rolls. Harold would have loved this. He would have complained about the centerpiece and then eaten 3 plates of turkey. Margaret laughed. "God, you're right. He was impossible." He was perfect. We shared a look, 2 women who had loved the same man in different ways, finally finding common ground in his absence. The doorbell rang at 4:17 p.m. I knew who it was before I opened it. I'd felt him coming all day, the way you feel a storm building on the horizon. Brandon stood on my porch. He was thinner than I remembered, the gaunt look of a man who'd been through something. His clothes were simple: khakis, a button-down shirt, a jacket that looked like it came from a department store rather than the boutiques Chloe had favored. In his hands, he held a pie, store-bought, pumpkin. "Hi, Mom." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in what felt like years. The expensive haircut had grown out. The practiced confidence was gone. What remained was something rawer, younger, more familiar. My boy. Somewhere under all the damage, my boy was still in there. "Is that pumpkin?" I asked. He looked down at the pie like he'd forgotten he was holding it. "Yeah. I know Dad hated pumpkin, but the store was out of sweet potato, and I didn't want to come empty-handed and—" "Brandon." He stopped rambling. "Come inside. It's cold." He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Not with words, anyway. He asked in other ways. Small ways. Ways that Harold would have recognized. He helped Margaret carry dishes to the table. He poured wine for Ruth and laughed at her jokes, even the crude ones. He sat in the chair I pointed to and bowed his head when I said grace, and when I mentioned that the garbage disposal had been making a strange noise, he got up without being asked, rolled up his sleeves, and fixed it. After dinner, I found him at the sink washing dishes. Not loading them into the dishwasher, actually washing them by hand, the way Harold used to. He had soap suds up to his elbows and a dish towel thrown over his shoulder, and he was humming something under his breath, an old song, one I used to sing to him when he was small. I stood in the doorway and watched him. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I know." He didn't turn around. "I want to." I walked over and picked up a towel, started drying. We worked in silence for a few minutes, the clink of dishes and the rush of water filling the space between us. Through the window, I could see Ruth and Margaret on the back porch, wrapped in blankets, sharing a cigarette Margaret would later deny ever smoking. "I'm sorry, Mom." Brandon's voice was quiet. He still wasn't looking at me. "I know." "I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm trying to be someone you can be proud of again." I set down the towel. "Brandon, look at me." He turned. His eyes were red, wet. "Forgiveness isn't something I can give you all at once," I said. "It's not a gift I can wrap up and hand over. It's something we build together, slowly, over time. You hurt me, badly, and it's going to take more than one dinner, more than one apology, more than one fixed garbage disposal to undo that." He nodded, swallowing hard. "But," I reached out and touched his face, my son's face, so much like his father's. "You're here. You showed up. You're trying. And that matters. That matters more than you know." I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. I never stopped. He broke then. Really broke, the way he hadn't let himself since he was a teenager. He cried into my shoulder, great heaving sobs, and I held him the way I had when he was 7 and his goldfish died, when he was 12 and the kids at school were cruel, when he was 17 and his first girlfriend broke his heart. I held my son, and I let him come home. Later, after the dishes were done and the leftovers were packed and Ruth and Margaret had driven off into the November night, Brandon and I sat on the back porch together. The stars were out. The air was cold, but not bitter. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. "Mom? Yes? Am I still welcome here, at your table?" I looked at him. This man who had been my baby, my boy, my biggest heartbreak, and my greatest hope. I thought about all the chairs that had sat empty at my table over the years, all the seats I'd saved for people who never showed up, never appreciated what was offered, never understood what it meant to be welcomed. Brandon had failed me. He had chosen wrong, over and over, until the choices nearly destroyed us both. But he was here now, trying, showing up, earning his way back, one dish at a time. "You can sit at my table any time, sweetheart," I said. I reached over and took his hand. "You just have to earn your chair."